Hi, everyone, and welcome to Climate Hero Club podcast. We are on a mission to champion the bold innovators behind climate tech, the stories, challenges, and the breakthroughs. I'm your host, Sunny. Today, I'm incredibly excited to speak with Chinmay Soman, CEO and co-founder of EarthSense. Hey, Chinmay, thank you for joining the show today.
Well, thank you, Sunny, for inviting me on this podcast. It's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Well, first question would be like, why did you get into climate tech?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up in India, I spent a lot of summers in my uncles and aunts' farms, just goofing around, getting in the way, but really learning how smallholder agriculture in Asia works as well, right? These are farms that are now being taken care of by my cousins who are finding it harder and harder to manage because of lack of labor, because of climate related stresses, floods, droughts, heat waves, all of those kinds of things. And that's kind of always been in the back of my mind. I didn't actually grow up in a rural area or on a farm. Went to engineering school, went to grad school in the US for bio nanotechnology research. And I've always been on this border of like, hey, I want to create cool new technology, but I also
Yeah.
want to see it achieve massive impact in the real world.
Mm.
And then as I was finishing my PhD, there was this big spike in sort of the farmer situation in India was deteriorating. There were literally many hundreds of thousands of farmers that committed suicide over a period of years. And that really sort of affected me deeply. I was like, okay, what am I doing? How can I help? Fortunately, none of my family was really seriously affected, but I knew that I had to step in and do something. So I took a little bit of a detour, learned more about agriculture, and decided to really jump in and get involved and help farmers, not just in India, but all around the world.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the story. And as I look about your background, I realize that you moved across from academia, startups, and deep tech. What drew you into the agriculture? You mentioned that a little bit in your answer, and then robots
Yeah,
specifically.
that's a great point. So when I went back to India after grad school to learn about what the problems were that farmers were facing, right? Like, how can we help them do better? One of the most interesting things that I learned was, given the huge population in India, you would think that like labor wouldn't be a problem, right? But one of the top concerns that any farmer that I spoke with would always bring up is that they can't find people to work on their fields, work in their orchards, work in their plantations, right? And that really struck me as a unique problem to solve, a very important problem to solve, because
Yeah.
not only was it harming the farming operations, all farmers really know quite well how to take better care of their fields, how to farm regeneratively, how to take care of their soil, but they have to resort to sort of increasing mechanization, increasing chemical use. That's often, expensive upfront, and it's also not good for the soil because they can't find enough people to do these regenerative practices. So that was kind of the turning point in my mind. I was like, okay, we should, as these AI robotics technologies are becoming possible, we should take a fresh look and create not just expensive, sophisticated, fancy tractors for the rich farmers in Europe and America, but robots, small and large, that would help farmers everywhere, including India, Asia, Africa, and of course, in the developed world as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then my next question would be, so you mentioned that a little bit, but what was there a turning point or aha moment that sparked the idea for Oat Sense?
Yeah. It's really about the people, right? Like you have to trust farmers, know, the more you talk to farmers, the more you understand that most of them know really well how to do good farming, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. But the bottlenecks for them are labor
Mm.
and ability to use agricultural inputs like fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides. They know they shouldn't be using them as much. They're, going into debt to buy more fertilizer. But if we had intelligent mechanisms to figure out like exactly how much fertilizer each plant needs and then provide just that, not only is it good for farmers, it's good for the soil, it's good for the planet. So that was kind of the, how do we put intelligence back in agriculture when we don't have people in the farms. And our answer was to create these robots that would be imbued with sort of the human judgment, human intelligence, and take care of each and every plant as they go through the field.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I understand that before founding EarthSense, you did have other ventures such as soil diagnostics or movable objects. How did the experience in those ventures help you shape EarthSense?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, the experience in previous startups definitely helped. Movable objects I founded sort of on the backs of my PhD research as a mobile sensing and computation startup. As smartphones were becoming more and more capable, I was like, okay, we can connect interesting sensors to these smartphones and use them as sensors for a variety of things. What I learned most from movable objects is that startup is not something you do on the side. You have to jump in and do
Yeah,
it full time, right? I was doing my postdoctoral fellowship research and then on the side also doing movable objects. That didn't quite work. Everybody else on that team was also doing it part time. So I was like, okay,
yeah,
if we're going to do it right, we have to do it seriously, full commitment, right?
yeah,
And then soil diagnostics was super useful as well. Our mission at Soil Diagnostics was to make it easy for farmers to understand the health of their soil. But what we found out was that just giving information to farmers wasn't enough. We need to
mm,
needed to close that loop and say, okay, hey, here's what's going on in your field, and here's a robot that's going to actually act on it and solve that problem for you. Right. So that's what we're doing now at EarthSense, where the robots are going through sensing the environment around them, sensing the plants, sensing soil conditions, and then taking action immediately. So I think, we're at a much better place because of these previous experiences.
yeah. Thank you for that. And then that is a good way to move to deeper understanding of EarthSense. So I
Yes.
understand that you have a product called Tesla Sentier, which is an impressive product. Can you walk us through how it works and what makes it different from other agri robots out there?
Yeah. So we actually have a family of robots. So at heart, what we have is Terra AI.
Yeah.
That's the brain that lives on the robot in the cloud, sort of distributed across all of our robots. And that's really the core, if you will, as such, right? And then around Terra AI, we've built so far three main different types of robots. We've deployed over 160 robots by this point over the last 6 years. So Terra Sensia is our small field sensing robots that's specifically targeted at the large sort of agricultural researchers, agricultural seed and agrochemicals developers. And they've been using it to create more productive, more climate resilient, more nutrient efficient, fertilizer efficient seeds for farmers. Then we have our second product, which is the Terra Preta soil carbon sequestering robot. So one of the biggest problems we've been facing all around the world is that soil carbon has been depleting over the last 150 years as we've increasingly intensified agriculture. And that trend has really accelerated in the last 60 years when we switched to sort of the green revolution methods of applying more and more synthetic fertilizer and things like that and doing large scale monocultures. So Terra Preta is aimed at reversing that trend and using what's called cover crops. These are plants that are planted as shield for the soil and to add soil organic matter to the soil to sequester gigatons of carbon in the soil. So not only is it great for climate
Yeah.
because we're taking that carbon out of the soil and not just like locking it away in some deep wells, but we're actually making it useful by putting it in the soil where it's actually increasing soil fertility, increasing the farm's resilience to climate change, resilience to drought stresses. And then our third product is the Terra Max robot and the X as a service that we're building around that. And that's really targeted at the Southeast Asian oil palm plantation industry to begin with.
Mm,
And they're one of their biggest costs as well as biggest greenhouse gas emission source is the fertilizer that they use.
mhm.
And we know very well from sort of talking to our customers, as well as from sort of really high quality research in the field that's been done by other people, that there's at least 30, maybe even up to 50% overuse in fertilizers, which is just completely, a horrible thing to do for everybody, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
help the farmers because they're spending too much money and not getting enough return. It doesn't help the aquatic ecosystem because a lot of this fertilizer is running away and polluting our rivers, lakes, oceans. And then it doesn't help the climate because a lot of this fertilizer is volatilizing as like nitrous oxide, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. So with the Terra Max robot, we take out the robots to our customers' fields and apply sort of on a per plant basis, per tree basis, precisely the amount of fertilizer required at the right time. And that helps with all of these three, reduces costs, increases yields, reduces water pollution, and reduces atmospheric greenhouse gas emissions as well.
Yeah, okay. So great three products. And then you mentioned that the robots can help sequence and verify gigatons of carbon. And can you explain a little bit more how exactly does that process work?
Yeah. So the carbon sequestration part is really important, right? So one of the things that I focused on early on is like, okay, how do we get farmers not just to practice these regenerative agriculture practices like carbon sequestration in their fields, but how do we reward them for doing the right thing? Right. And that was a big part of my postdoctoral fellowship. So the US National Science Foundation gave me $500,000 over 3 years to take a look at these kinds of regenerative agriculture practices and the economic impacts of that. Like what positive economic externalities are we creating? And then how can farmers get a share of that reward? So with the robots, what we do is we go out, plant these cover crops. The robots are intelligent. They're recording all of this data. We know exactly what was planted, when, and where. At the end of the season, we go back out and either harvest that cover crop, and that allows us to know exactly how that cover crop grew. We also use other types of data like satellite and drone imagery that allows us to say, okay, this is exactly how much carbon was put into the ground. And that allows us to sell those carbon offsets in the market. We're forming some interesting tie-ups around that, and then also paying a significant reward to the farmers for doing these right things with regenerative agriculture. So robotics is the key that unlocks many of these current bottlenecks of like labor shortage, lack of good data, and then the ability to actually really maximize the effectiveness of the cover crops.
And then you mentioned that the robots will have improved productivity, profitability, and resilience. I wonder if do you think these goals coexist for small scale farmers too?
Absolutely. And that's been the goal from day one, right? Like I want my cousins who farm like 20, 40 hectares in India
Yeah.
or even the smaller farmers, obviously, to be able to benefit from this. So we've engineered from day one the robots to be really, really low cost, really robust,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
super easy to use for anybody.
Yeah.
So, very intentionally from day one, it was like, hey, we're not going to go out and start selling these to farmers until we know that they will actually derive value from it, right? We don't want to be another one of these companies that goes out and sells, snake oil to farmers because they're in enough, they face enough challenges already, right? We don't want to add to that burden. When we are certain that we have a good solution for smallholder farmers, we'll go out, and we're starting to do that now.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And then during the process of building the company and product, what are the major bottlenecks in agricultural innovation today that you wish more people would understand?
That's a really fantastic question. Agricultural technology has been a hope and a dream for a lot of people in the last 7, 8 years since I've been working on sort of this bringing robotics and AI to agriculture. I've seen many great teams try to do a good job, and some of them have succeeded, of course, but a large majority of them have kind of fallen by the wayside. They haven't been able to create the right product, find the right customers, find the right venture funding,
Yep.
or other sources of capital. So agriculture is different from many other types of industries, right? There is a seasonality to it.
Yep.
Farmers by nature tend to be very conservative and adopt new solutions more carefully. And the funding environment around agtech needs to match that, right? We need patient capital, more purpose driven, more mission driven capital, and then a mix of funding sources, not just venture capital, but also debt financing. By putting those things together, I think we'll be able to break through this bottleneck of like, you need to create a product with these emerging technologies. We're competing with like, Facebook and OpenAI for the top quality engineers in the world.
Yeah.
That's what we need to make these products really, successful, to create a product market fit, create commercial success. We need primarily patient capital. On the people front, we've been extremely, extremely lucky. We recruited folks in India. Recruited, half of our team is in India, half of our team is in the US. And these are, top-notch folks that any given day they could land a number of other tech jobs. But because they're purpose-driven, because they're mission-driven,
Yep.
they've chosen to work with EarthSense. And I'm truly grateful for our team to have stuck with us and, made this progress possible.
And then in terms of your scaling and partnership, I understand that you partner with Corteva or work with UI, UC, and NSF. So what are the key to successful industry academia and startup corporate collaboration?
Yeah. Oh, well, fantastic question. Again, with customers, what we found is the customers that really will benefit from this are the ones that show that forethought of like, yes, this is an emerging technology. We need to engage with a startup to commercialize, tailor this to our needs. And then, that initial investment of time and effort and, a little bit of money will pay off massively. So some of these collaborations that we've had are now starting to really pay off. So for example, in the palm industry, SD Guthrie, which is the world's largest palm plantation company, has been our innovation partner and customer for the last 3.5, 4 years now almost. And we're really starting to scale up with them, thousands of hectares, with EarthSense solutions, saving them a few $100s on input costs and labor, and then starting to increase the yield by several $100s as well. There's a huge opportunity that they're capturing or poised to capture. So but it takes that foresight and deliberate collaboration strategy to really make this work.
And then what excites you the most about the next 5 years in climate tech or agri-tech in general?
Wow, the potential is huge, right? I mean, we're
Yep.
we're really just starting to sort of make a little dent in what's possible.
Mhm.
So with oil palm, there is 20 million hectares just here in Southeast Asia, 5 million hectares in Malaysia, 15 million hectares in Indonesia. With our corn and soybean farmers in the US, targeting 200 million acres of agricultural farmland in the US, rest of Southeast Asia, those are huge opportunities. We have demand from South America and Africa. So really worldwide, farmers are looking for solutions to these problems of labor shortage, increasing costs, of building resilience to their operations. And then even downstream, people are becoming more and more aware of these, right? They want to buy more sustainably farmed, more regeneratively farmed, climate friendly grown food. Impact, right? How can we create food that is at the same time solving climate change, that all at the same time solving water pollution? So we're on the verge of making this happen, and we're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of interest from both our customers, farmers, as well as consumers everywhere in backing this strategy of working towards a better planet.
I guess the final question for you that we ask every guest would be, how would you define and measure the impact you are having in the world?
In multiple ways, right? We have to be very quantitative and working with our robots. That is very easy, as it were. As the robots are going through and doing their jobs, they're recording literally everything that they're doing, right? So that allows us to really say, okay, yes, this is how much carbon we're putting into the ground. This is how much fertilizer we've saved. This is how much greenhouse gas emissions we've reduced. That's really just the starting point. Another huge factor of it, of course, is the farmer incomes, right? Farmers worldwide are extremely financially constrained. That's one big reason why they tend to be cautious about adopting new technologies. Being able to measure and deliver to our farmers is like, hey, here's how much you've saved on your fertilizer. Here's how much your soil fertility has improved with this soil organic matter, soil carbon sequestration. Here's how much extra money you've made because of the adoption of these technologies, because of the benefits of these technologies. That's huge. And we're starting to track that as well. And then the last thing is really, it's a little bit fuzzy, I guess, in terms of how we quantify it, but the impact on human welfare, right? The burden that farmers face in running their operations, making their life easier. That's very important to us. I want my cousins who now, have little kids, my nephews and nieces, I want their life to be really easy and fun because they have these robots doing all the hard work on their fields while they get the chance to kind of still be in charge, still exercise good judgment on their fields as to what needs to be done. And then because we're producing good, high quality, helping produce good, high quality food that's better for people, better for the planet, I think we'll end up improving human happiness and human well-being all around. So that's really kind of the longer term goal. I don't know how to quantify that yet, but we'll figure something out.
Yeah, it takes time to really start seeing how your work will impact the world around you and take time to quantify that. But I just want to say thank you so much for sharing with us. And I think a lot of people will find this useful, not just people who actually want to use the product, but also people who will feel inspired by the work that you're doing and see that, oh wow, you can actually build business that not only you create the revenue for the company, but also can impact the planet and people in the positive way. Thank you so much for your time, Chinmay. And where can people find you?
We are at earthsense.co.
Mhm.
And I'm on LinkedIn. If you search for my name, I should show up very easily. And yeah, we're always looking for partners to join the EarthSense team. We're always looking for people who want to start using our robots and other robotics as a service solutions. We're looking for investors as well. We're currently raising a round, getting pretty close to closing the round. We'd love to hear from your audience if they're interested in any of this.
Yeah, we will spread the word. Great. Have a nice weekend. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the podcast.